Howdy, welcome to Ausgrave Royalty. I am Justin. Welcome to another entry in our examination of Bolen's gods and goddesses. Hope y'all have been enjoying the series so far, and I hope y'all have enjoyed or taken the opportunity to go check out season 1 and 2 so that you can have the full context of what's going on here in terms of archetypal psychology. For those who don't know, season 1 examines the theoretical foundations of archetypal psychology. We cover Archetypes by Dr. Anthony Stevens. And then in season 2, we cover King, Warrior, Magician, Lover by Robert L. Moore and Douglas Gillette, an examination of the masculine archetypes and an actual application of how the archetypes can improve lives. And in that latter vein of application, that's led us to Bolen's works here. So as usual, I have a mountain of notes, more so than on any other god or goddess, actually, for Aphrodite here. So a ton to get to, so we'll hop right into it. Bolen says, Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, I place in a category all on her own as the alchemical goddess, a fitting designation for the magic process of power of transmutation that she alone had. She inspired poetry and persuasive speech and symbolizes the transformative and creative power of love. Now, it's important to remember, whatever you think you know about Aphrodite, she is ultimately, in the context that we're talking about here, a symbol. So it's important to know what she represents and then combines with the other gods and goddesses, meaning the other symbols. So we'll talk about, for example, her with Hephaestus. Hephaestus loved to build and construct things that worked and beautiful things. And Aphrodite, symbolically, being goddess of love and beauty, works well with Hephaestus in the forge, forging things that are beautiful, right? That's the kind of fertilization and you could call it sexuality that Aphrodite has. Whatever she touches, she transmutes, kind of. And that's what Bolen means as the alchemical goddess. For OGs of the channel will know that I've had several videos about alchemy before. So Aphrodite, along with Hermes, are very close to alchemy. So FYI. She valued emotional experience with others more than either independence from others, which characterized the virgin goddesses like Artemis or Athena, or permanent bonds to others, which characterize the vulnerable goddesses like Hera, Demeter, and Persephone. As the alchemical goddess, Aphrodite shares some similarities with the two other categories, yet is intrinsically different from both of them. For Aphrodite, relationships are important, but not as long-term commitments to other people. Aphrodite seeks to consummate relationships and generate new life. Intercourse, that's the word I was looking for, is synonymous with communication or communion. Consummation towards perfection. Union, joining together as one, and to know is really to understand each other. The desire to know and be known is what Aphrodite generates. Again, it's intercourse or communion, communication. She's she comes in, has intercourse with either hard work or with Ares, with war, and things are generated from that. And then she goes elsewhere. So she just generates and generates. Hence the alchemical aspect. Aphrodite consciousness is focused yet receptive. Such a consciousness emphasizes in what is attended to and is affected by it. Basking in the glow of her focus, they feel attractive and interesting as she actively draws them out and reacts in a loving or affirming way. It is her style to be genuinely and momentarily involved in whatever interests her. The effect on the other person can be seductive if misleading, but misleading if her way of interacting creates the impression that she is fascinated or enamored when she is not. Basically, she's very fickle. And that can be frustrating. Aphrodite consciousness. If we are engaged in transformative work, an emotional field is generated between us, powerful enough to touch us both. As Jung noted, analysis involves the totality of both personalities. Both conscious attitudes and unconscious elements in doctor and patient are involved in a process which both are deeply affected. Quote, for two personalities to meet is like the mixing of two different chemical substances. If there is any combustion at all, both are transformed. Aphrodite consciousness is present in all creative work, including that done in solitude. The relationship dialogue is in between the person and the work, from which something new emerges, like my music. If you, sorry, I'm about to sneeze, I think. If you've seen my video on music, I have like I guess you could call it an allegory or a symbol for how I make music or what it feels like to make music, which is akin to a detective solving a mystery. Like the detective gets a file, and that's like the initial idea. I want to make something happy, but kind of intense also, but also with an edge. And the detective is looking at it, okay? So what do I know? All right. I know that if I want to make something happy, X, Y, and Z. So I can eliminate a bunch of suspects and a bunch of different types of sounds. And then it's like that with I've decided on a bass line. I've confirmed that this is the bass line I want. So now I can not work on any other bass lines at all, right? In that, and then one by one, as you nail in elements of the song, you try and hunt down the criminal, right? Of course, you probably, as a composer, rarely get to it. But anyway, watch that video for more on that. When Aphrodite consciousness is present, energy is generated. Lovers glow with well-being and heightened energy. Conversation sparkles, stimulating thoughts and feelings. When two people truly meet each other, both receive energy from the encounter and feel more vitality than before, regardless of the content, which, in therapy, can be very painful material. Work becomes invigorating rather than draining. Absorbed by whom we are with, or what we are doing, we lose track of time, a characteristic that Aphrodite shares with Hestia. Hestia, of course, losing track of time as she becomes immersed in her chores, in her keeping the nest and all that. And this is what I like to think Aphrodite you could equivocate with as a flow state. You might have heard that term, getting in the flow. It's a book too. Aphrodite is like the flow state made manifest. Whatever it touches just glows and is immersed and thrives. But nothing stays in. It's not meant to be a long-lasting thing. It's, or at least I don't think so. Typically, they're just rare moments where you're completely, they call it the zone of proximal development, I think. When your skill level and the difficulty are close enough to where immersion can take place. The Pygmalion effect. The Pygmalion effect is a term that describes the power of positive expectations on the behavior of others. It is so called after Pygmalion, who fell in love with his own sculpture of the perfect woman, a statue that was brought to life by Aphrodite and became Galatea. There was a study Rosenthal found that students live up to or down to their teachers' expectations of them. He studied ghetto school children whose academic performance tended to deteriorate the longer they remained in school. These children had teachers who were convinced that the children could not learn. He devised a research project to determine which came first, the expectation or the performance. He concluded that our expectations have an extraordinary influence on others, of which we are often oblivious. We experience the alchemy of Aphrodite when we feel drawn towards another person and fall in love. We feel it when we are touched by her power of transformation and creativity. We know it when we have the capacity to make what we focus on beautiful and valued because it is imbued with our love. Whatever is ordinary and undeveloped, best the material of everyday life. It can be turned into gold through Aphrodite's creative and alchemical influence, in the same way that the Pygmalion statue was turned into Galatea through love. Life through love. Aphrodite, the archetype. The Aphrodite archetype governs women's enjoyment of love and beauty, sexuality, and sensuality. The realm of the lover exerts a powerful pull on many women as a force with a woman's personality. Aphrodite can be as demanding as Hera and Demeter, the other two strong and instinctual archetypes. Aphrodite tells women to fulfill both creative and procreative functions. So there's a lot here. Number one, again, I've said this on every video, but in case it's your first time, whenever we say can be a strong influence on many women, that can be many men as well. We all have access to all of the archetypes. Men, the feminine archetypes, thus basically the attributes of the goddesses, or women for the masculine archetypes, that is the attributes of the gods. Let's see. Second of all, Bolen says the realm of the lover exerts a powerful pull. We talked about the lover, although I know I'm mixing up context here, but it's worth mentioning that Moore and Gillette's king lover archetype of King Warrior Magician Lover, their book, it was known as the outlaw archetype, in that while the other archetypes seek to order things around them, whether it be in the real world or the conceptual realm, the lover seeks to break boundaries, and it's like a rebel. It's an insatiable, like as Robert L. Moore puts it, the lover just wants to lick everything. And basically it's boundaryless. And the lover is best when it's contained by the other archetypes, when it's all that energy is transmuted into whatever focused goal is being put forth. TLDR, the person who loves everything loves nothing, right? So I want to make sure I get to the myth of Psyche. So I'm going to skip ahead here. Psyche was a pregnant mortal woman who sought to be reunited with her husband Eros, god of love and Aphrodite's son. Psyche realizes that she must submit herself to an angry and antagonistic Aphrodite if she is ever to be reconciled with Eros, so she presents herself to the goddess. To test her, Aphrodite gives her 4 tasks. The 4 tasks of Aphrodite have important symbolic meanings. Each one represents a capability that women need to develop. Each time Psyche masters a task, she acquires an ability she did not have before. An ability equated in Jungian psychology with the animus, or the masculine aspect of a woman's personality. Although these abilities often feel masculine to women like Psyche, who, like Psyche, need to make an effort to develop them, they are natural attributes of Artemis and Athena women, who we've talked about on the channel before. So in the first task, Aphrodite led Psyche into a room and showed her an enormous pile of seeds jumbled together: corn, barley, millet, poppy, chickpeas, lentils, and beans, and tells her that she must sort out each kind of seed or grain into its own pile before evening. It's this giant pile. The task seemed impossible until a host of lowly ants came to her aid, placing each kind grain by grain on its own mound. Similarly, when a woman must make a crucial decision, she often has to sort out a jumble of conflicted feelings and competing loyalties. These insects are analogous to an intuitive process, the workings of which are beyond conscious control. Or clarity can come through her conscious effort to systematically or logically assess and assign priority to the many elements involved in the decision. Task 2. Aphrodite next ordered Psyche to acquire some golden fleece from the terrible rams of the sun. They are huge, aggressive, horned beasts who are in a field, butting against each other. It's Psyche's work to go among them to try to take their... I have typos. Basically, she needs to be careful because she'll be trampled or crushed. So she'll need to be cautious. Once again, the task seems impossible until a green reed comes to her aid and advises her to wait until sundown, when the rams disperse and retire. Then she can safely pick strands of golden fleece off the brambles against which the rams had brushed. Symbolically, the golden fleece represents power, which a woman needs to acquire without being destroyed in the attempt to attain some. Acquiring the golden fleece without destroying Psyche is a metaphor for the task of gaining power and remaining a compassionate person. In my psychiatric practice, though, I find that keeping this task in mind is very helpful to every woman who is learning to assert herself. Otherwise, by focusing only on expressing her needs or anger, her conversations become alienating confrontations that do not help her achieve what she wants and that present her in a harsh, destructive light. Right, I'm just reviewing. Let me check something real quick. One moment. Checking something in the book real quick. Yeah, a green reed comes to her aid. I was like, was that a typo or what? No, but it is a green reed comes to her aid. Right. Yeah, she says, in my psychiatric practice, I find that keeping this task in mind is very helpful to every woman who is learning to assert herself in terms of gaining power and remaining a compassionate person. Task 3. For the third task, Aphrodite places a small crystal flask in Psyche's hand and tells her she must fill it with water from a foreboding stream. This stream cascades from a spring at the summit of the highest to the lowest depths, highest of Olympus to the lowest depths of the underworld, before being drawn up through the earth to emerge once more from the spring. Metaphorically, this stream represents the circular flow of life, into which Psyche must dip her flask. As she gazes at the icy stream, which is etched deeply into a jagged cliff and guarded by dragons, the task of filling her flask seems impossible. This time, an eagle comes to her aid. The eagle symbolizes the ability to see the landscape from a distant perspective and swoop down to grasp what is needed. This is not the usual perceptive mode for a woman, such as Psyche, who is so personally involved that she cannot see the forest for the trees. It is especially important for Aphrodite women to get some emotional distance on her relationships in order to see overall patterns and pick out important details that will enable her to grasp what is significant. Then she can assimilate experience and shape the form her life can take. Again, just want to reiterate, even though we're talking about Psyche here, Psyche and Aphrodite archetypally are illustrating a united principle here, basically all these traits. So Psyche's myth is Aphrodite's myth, basically. Task 4. For her fourth and final task, Aphrodite orders Psyche to descend into the underworld with a small box for Persephone to fill with beauty. Psyche equates this task with death. Now it is far-seeing. I have another typo here. Now it is a far-seeing tower's turn to give advice to her. No, that wasn't a typo. Thought it was like a Grecian name or something. Okay. Yeah, literally a tower, a far-seeing tower, gives advice to her. This task is more than the traditional hero's test of courage and determination, for Aphrodite has made it particularly difficult. Psyche is told that she will encounter pathetic people who will ask for her help, and 3 times she will have to harden her heart to compassion, ignore their pleas, and continue on. If she does not, she will stay forever in the underworld. To set a goal and keep it in the face of the request for help is especially difficult for all except virgin goddess women. The task that would be Hera, Demeter, and Persephone. No, yeah, all except the virgin goddess women. So, sorry, Athena, Artemis, and Hestia are the virgin goddesses. The task Psyche accomplishes when she says no 3 times is to exercise choice. Many women allow themselves to be imposed on and diverted from doing something for themselves. They cannot accomplish whatever they set out to do or what is best for them until they learn to say no. Through the 4 tasks, Psyche develops capabilities and strengths as her courage and determination are tested. Yet, despite all she acquires, her basic nature and priorities remain unchanged, and risks everything for it and wins. So in the last few minutes, I'll just give my reaction to Aphrodite. I'll start with the fact that I actually recognize a lot of myself here. Namely, like being in love or in the flow state while working on some creative project. I'm pretty sure everyone knows the trope about how time flies when you're absorbed in a task, especially if it's artistic. And I have videos about this, like I mentioned. And yeah, so, with the music stuff, often tracks feel like they're writing themselves, like they're telling me what they want. And that goes with all art. What is it? Like Michelangelo said of David, he said, he was asked how, I don't know, maybe I'm mixing up artists here. He was asked like how he sculpted such a thing. And he said, I didn't really sculpt it. I just removed what was in the way. Yeah. So, there's the phrase like the muse, right? The inner muse to inspire great works of art. And I've also been completely smitten with women. When the chemistry is like explosive and overwhelming. They're attractive and easy to talk to and enthusiastic at the same time. And it's nice. I mean, as a total understatement. Yeah, and I would say I've also been hurt by Aphrodite women. Um, they leap, unexpectedly on top of you, and everything's going great. I mean, it's just like this cocktail in your brain explodes, and wow, she really likes me, and it's nice and wonderful. And then just as quickly, um, she gets distant and you know moves on, and you're like, what happened? You know. So, and I'm thinking of a particular incident, and it turns out that's what's called love bombing in the narcissist cycle. It's amazing at the very beginning, and then they get very distant very quickly, but you can't reconcile it with what happened at the beginning because it was so great. So they couldn't be bad, right? Because they were so great at the beginning. And then you're confused and you're like, am I really the problem? And that's really when the gaslighting comes in. And then as you gaslight, you become more and more devalued, and then eventually they move on. And that's like the dark narcissism cycle. So I've been through that. Yeah, for more on that, I'd recommend the Personal Development School, PDS. I'll link it below. But learning about attachment styles and all that is really valuable. And there are some good channels about narcissism as well. I like Surviving Narcissism, and with Dr. Les Carter. I think that's my favorite one, but there are some other good ones too. So, yeah, but along with that also, narcissists are like predators. They're like predators in the human population. They just wreak emotional damage. That's what they do. It's what I do. It's what plants crave, yeah, it's just what they do. And but they're all like also learning about attachment styles, about how like people affect one another and how they bond. That's really valuable to know as well. And there are the PDS Thais Gibson is behind that channel, and she articulates the secure attachment style, the anxious attachment, the dismissive avoidant, and the fearful avoidant. So like the secure, things are healthy and intimate in a proportioned way. I'm just going very quickly here. Go to the channel for the full explanation. Anxious attachment is like the kind of stereotypically clingy, like, how are you doing? How you doing? How you doing? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Oh, you're doing great. Like thousands of texts. They think by connecting that the person won't leave them, but by being so aggressively connecting, it ends up alienating their, person. Dismissive avoidant is like they had parents that neglected them in their childhood, so they learned, oh, nobody cares about me when I cared about my parents, so I have to learn to get through this life on my own. So now, as they grow up, anyone who try and connects with them, their brain tells them, oh, I've been through this before. Someone's trying to connect with me, but I already know I can't trust that. So I'm going to keep them away. So that's what dismissive avoidant is. Fearful is like hot and cold. They oscillate between anxious and dismissive. And typically that's characterized by a physically or sexually abusive childhood, where you could, or emotionally abusive. 1 minute you're in mommy and daddy's favor or one parent's favor, the next you're not and you're bad. And it's like hot and cold, and they can never, relax. Yeah. Anyway, that's a lot of ranting. Yeah, get the books, find out all you need to know are in the books. Hope y'all are getting value out of this. Let me know what y'all thought about all this, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Dionysus. All right, bye-bye.